Okay, today we have with us Connie Reguli. I knew I wouldn't get that right. Yes, so Connie is an attorney from the US, and we have US viewers, UK viewers, Canada viewers, and Australian, of course. And Connie's here to talk to us about what the situation with child protection is like in the US, and hopefully help us out over here as well. So Connie, you were a businesswoman and then a family law attorney. Then in 2008, you got involved in child protection cases and noticed an over-zealousness in the prosecution of parents. I've heard you say your passion is for child protection reform. Were there any cases in particular that brought you to this place?
Well, yeah, thank you for asking that. So, first of all, I want people to understand that I had a life before an attorney. So, my family was in the restaurant business, a very successful restaurant business for many, many, many years. And honestly, it was sort of accidental. I looked around at the operation of our business and I said, there's kind of too many cooks in the stew because, my mom, my brothers, it was just like too many of us. So, I went back to law school. I didn't think I would end up in sort of the family forum, but I ended up just picking up a few cases here and there. And excuse me. So really 1994, I started as a prosecutor. My very first jury trial was a baby murder, a very serious case. It was a jury trial. So I understand real child abuse and evidence and presenting a trial. And then in 1997, I went into private practice and started working with, just kind of all different sorts of things. And then a few cases came to me that Child Protective Services was involved in. And so we go back, this is about 2000, 2002, right? And we really had a hard time getting, in Tennessee, it's a DCS, Department of Children's Services, but I'm just going to refer to it generally as CPS, Child Protective Services, because everybody all over the world understands that lingo. And we really had a hard time getting them to do anything. I mean, I had horrible cases come to me where a little girl had been sexually assaulted by her stepfather from the time she was 6 to 12 years old. There had been multiple DCS referrals, and I happened to represent the biological father who wasn't told until 6 years after this had been going on what had happened. And then I ended up with another case where I was helping this family, this middle-class family, adopt some children out of foster care, and DCS fought it. I mean, it was just crazy. So it really kind of accidentally started, but I just noticed how incompetent it was. And so in about 2011, I ended up having a case in which a professor of sociology, of social work and sociology, in the University of Michigan became involved with my case. And she actually had written the book on how to properly interview children who were sexually abused. She helped me, consulted with me, kind of went through it, but I knew she was close to the system. I knew that she knew what was going on. And so then I saw this shift of this overzealous taking children and putting them in foster care and not listening to the parents and demonizing everybody. And I just one day, just out of pure frustration, I sent an email to this professor and I says, why is it that they're so overzealous at removing children and putting them in foster care instead of trying to rehabilitate some of these families or do a proper investigation, especially like medical kidnap cases where there's so often a serious medical problem that is just not being attended to. And I got a very short email back from her and it said, because Title 4B is limited and Title 4E is unlimited. I was like, what? And, she was very smart and I knew she had very little time and she knew I was smart. So she knew I was going to take that little tiny piece of information and go on this research thing. And that's when it all started to unfold to me. That's when I found out all about Title 4E. So in America, our funding for CPS comes through the Social Security Act, and it's Title 4B, which is the money to help families stabilize.
Yes.
And Title 4E, which is foster care money. Okay, so here, foster care money is basically a dollar for dollar match. It is unlimited, and it is a use it or lose it scheme. So if you don't use the money you get, and here in Tennessee, we have a $680 million a year budget for this one state. $300 million comes from the federal government.
Mm.
If you don't use it, you don't get it again.
So we have a similar system in Australia, and that's been my theory on why this is happening. Because if they don't remove a certain amount of children, they lose that funding.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I
And
mean, not very
and
well
it,
thought out.
no, and it becomes a quota basically.
Mm.
And and I just every research tool I could find I used. Well, here in the U.S. we had an organization called KidsCount.org, and they really kind of trimmed down on the data that they report. But for a while, they were giving us lots of data, and I could go in there, I could look up a state, I could find children removed, children in foster care, children returned home, and just run these stats over a 5-year period.
Mm.
And what I found when you ran removals for a 5-year period, it was the same number within 4 or 5%.
Mm.
And when you look at that, you go, either we're doing a lousy job of parenting as a nation, or this is a quota, right?
Definitely.
So, yeah, so and then I started tearing apart the laws. And of course, as a lawyer, I had seen so many laws that were so bad. I mean, I've kind of looked at some of the issues that you're facing there, but the secret courts, the secret court orders, the guardian ad litem's that never speak to parents, never do proper investigations. I mean, it became so frustrating. And as a lawyer, one of the things I'm known for is being very detailed and thorough, and I want to be prepared. I want to know my law, but I want to know the facts of my case as I walk into it. Mm. So back to your question as to what got me into that. It was, I've been in this long enough that I saw them do nothing. And then I realized, of course, there were a lot of class action lawsuits because children were getting lost in foster care. So I saw them do nothing, and then I saw this shift. And I saw hypervigilance. And it wasn't just CPS. I saw it in the family court system too. And I
yes,
know
it does seem to be linked, doesn't it? Family court and
oh, it does. And it's so frightening to me because I went back to law school late in life, and I say I was a grown-up before I even started, but I thought my job as a lawyer was to help develop the facts and get the facts in front of the court and to know the law, and then the judge would look at those two sets of facts and try to get down to the truth, right? What's the most true, right? Oh my gosh, it is not like that.
No, I've noticed.
It was so disappointing. It was so disappointing. And just the judicial bias. And I mean, and one of the reasons I became so charged was because a judge who, held me in contempt of court because I had challenged the constitutional issues in his court. So it's really what I saw and how at some point as a lawyer, and I'll speak to all lawyers out there, and I'll speak to people out there who are looking for a lawyer. At some point as a lawyer, you have to decide, what kind of lawyer am I going to be? Okay. What kind of lawyer? Now, I'm a lawyer who speaks out. Now, it's cost me because, excuse me, they have come after me. Okay. I've had lots of retaliation. I've had, judges love me or hate me. There's not much in between. There are some that hate me, and, and I'm not going to name names, but I know who they are and they know who they are. But on the other hand, on the other end of that, I'm also very well respected in some forums, right? So you have to decide what kind of lawyer you're going to be. And when you're shopping for a lawyer and you're talking to a lawyer, you kind of have to go there with your lawyer and say, what kind of lawyer are you? Because, some people think that a lawyer is just going to do whatever you tell them to do, and they're not, right?
No.
Yeah. But on the other hand, you can, and as a litigant, you can say, help me help you with my case. Help me, tell me what you need from me, and then go do it. So, so I saw what was happening. I saw the injustice. I saw the sloppiness. I saw the horrible laws. I started speaking out to the General Assembly, and it's like, if I can do anything, I can become I can become very knowledgeable about this. I can educate other people. I can't win. I can't win against CPS corruption one case at a time. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't do it one case at a time. I
Mm,
need people. I need people to listen, to understand, to become more braver,
mm,
okay, to be able to speak up for themselves
mm,
and really focus. So and this is the only way we can do it, is
mm.
being a collective group. And everything starts with a thought, right?
Yep.
Everything starts with a thought. And the whole world was created with a thought. I'm a lawyer because I had a thought about being a lawyer.
Mm,
Okay. So we can do this. We can
mm.
do this. We just need to take all those thoughts and move forward.
Well, we've currently got parents coming forward and speaking, because we have gag orders in Australia, where parents can't speak about what's happened. And we've currently got parents coming forward and telling their story, and they're risking imprisonment in doing that. But they're very brave people people have had enough. And until we speak this out and get the message out and have the general public understanding what's occurring, because, you wouldn't believe what's occurring. I mean, you would probably, but I think the general public wouldn't. It'd break their worldview on how things work,
Oh, yeah. And I want to talk about gag orders because, I mean, basically, I'm the poster child for the ultimate gag order because,
Yeah.
they arrested me. They arrested
Yeah.
me. I had a client, she had an order. It was an illegal order on its face. I advised her, and I'm going to be careful about what I say because I'm still under that indictment. We're still
Yep.
trying to shape it out. But as soon as and they waited a year to arrest me. And then the kids were already home. Everything was dismissed. And then they come and arrest the mom and arrest me. And the very day that they booked me, the district attorney did a motion to the judge to keep me from talking about my public criminal arrest on social media.
Wow.
And the judge denied it, and thank goodness, and he should have. But he kind of left his order. It wasn't like a total denial, First Amendment right denial. It was like I'm going to deny it for now, and maybe we'll talk about it later. So I'm really am the poster child, and I have pulled, because I have spoken in public forums about the juvenile court system, I've been retaliated against by the licensing officials. So
Really?
yes.
Wow.
Yes. There were 8 sets of parents that wanted to speak out, and we all went to the county commission, which is our juvenile court judge is a county position, and we had 3 minutes, and we organized, and we just went, and everybody kind of told their story, heartbreaking stories. In 3 minutes, they were able to do it. I mean, and people's eyes were like going, whoa, right?
Yeah.
And they came after me and sanctioned me for it. So,
wow.
yes.
Okay.
I impugn the administration of justice, is what they said.
I know we've got other questions, but also on that, we have very few lawyers in Australia who will actually even represent in a child protection case. They are so they know they can't win, and we have what's called legal aid, which is where the government will pay for a lawyer if a case has merit. Well, without fail, every case is said to not have merit. So there's no public lawyer defence, so to speak. And even if there were, these lawyers are just shocking. They'll just say agree with CPS on everything.
And so here what happens is a parent is entitled to an attorney if their parental rights are challenged by the state government. So they do have an appointment process. They're private attorneys, but they do get like an hourly rate after they turn a bill into the state. And but I tell the people this and say, look, the judges have a list of attorneys that do this, right? And so they rotate, these attorneys rotate, some represent parents, some guardian ad litems. And I always say this, I say, so the judge is your boss, basically, right?
Right.
And,
Yeah.
so would a judge rather have an attorney walk up to the judge with the state's attorney and say, we're going to enter an agreement and we're going to agree to the charges in the petition, and we are going to, work on a plan to get the kids back, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Or when I walk in the courtroom, it's like, okay, we're going to have a 4-day trial, right? The judge is going to have to work all day for 4 days, going to make all kinds of evidentiary rulings, going to have to issue a written order that I can turn around and appeal, right? So it's very difficult to find those challenges. Now, I'm also going to say this. I am going to say this for sure. There are cases where parents have issues with drugs or, are severe neglect. I mean, where they truly are having real difficulty. And I mean, there are situations like that where parents, I still don't think they should lose their children forever, but they need intervention.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
I don't say every case is a winning case just because you have parental rights.
No.
But certainly parents who lose their children over, there's so many false allegations. They just make stuff up sometimes.
Yeah. So weird.
They call every parent a drug dealer, whether they are or not.
Really?
Just because it's so shocking for the court that they will take their kids away on just a belief that they could be a drug dealer. So.
The go-to in Australia is mental health issues. So they'll tend to, every parent is diagnosed just about with borderline personality disorder. Yeah. And for some reason, I can't quite understand why treated mental health or disabilities should automatically mean a child shouldn't be with a parent anyway. So, but nevertheless, that's enough for the courts here. If a person has a disability or has been, and I say diagnosed, they're not really diagnosed. It's imputed diagnosis.
Right.
Then that's enough. So
yeah. So let's talk about that for just a second, because here in the U.S. we do have the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it is we had in 2015 the Department of Justice issued an opinion on a case out of Massachusetts, and it was a case in which the mother was, I think she was MR. I think she had a very low intellectual IQ, could not care for a child on her own, but her mother stepped in and said, I want my daughter to parent, and so she will live with me. I will, be a guardian for the child, and she needs to preserve her parental rights. And the state took the child instead. And somebody must have known somebody, because they got the Department of Justice and the Department of Health and Human Services to come in and switch that and say that it had been a violation of ADA. Americans with Disabilities Act. So I tried to bring an ADA action. I did not succeed. It had some problems, but I needed to kind of get those issues out before the court. So ADA is an issue, disabilities. So let's talk about mental health for a minute. I also agree. It is hard. I did my master's in psychology before I became a lawyer. And so, some of the issues of personality disorders versus mental health issues, like depression is one thing. Borderline personality is something else. So, they've really changed the whole system of testing that. And you have to really, again, this is where it's important for an attorney to be involved who's willing to question the testing process.
Exactly.
Right? So, there are some tools that they can use, like the MMPI, et cetera.
DSM.
So you've got to be able to challenge those mental health professionals who here has known a parent for an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right? Versus their true ability to function within their global world.
Yes.
And they to have a thing in psychological testing here in the U.S. called a GAF, which is a Global Assessment of Functioning, which was a score that they gave you, which was somewhere between, I guess 100 is you're the perfect person, which I don't even know what that looks like. But, you know, they would measure that you would get points for things like, can you keep a full-time job? You know, can you grocery shop? I mean, you know, what is your functioning level? So, you know, mental health and personality disorders are very difficult, but you cannot effectively diagnose that in an hour and a half.
No,
right?
certainly not. Yeah.
2.5 hours. So
well, we've actually got cases where, like when you were speaking about that case before, I've got a very similar case where the mother, she was young, and I'm not sure of her mental capacity. She seems fine to me, but I'm not a psychologist. But she lost her child, I think, in about 50 days or what have you. Again, she was with her mum, so her mum was helping her. And they based that on a psychologist saying that she had a low IQ. She had never she'd never even met this psychologist, let alone done an IQ test with him or her. I'm not sure which it was. And we're finding a few cases like that where not only, I mean, of course, a psychologist or a psychiatrist in 1.5 hours really can't make a diagnosis, but we're finding cases where they haven't even bothered to bring in a psychologist. But in the courts, when they might go to their own private psychologist and actually get evaluated, and we can have this psychologist come in and say this person is not even suffering from a mental health illness, and it's ignored. The magistrate says, well, thank you, and boom, the children are gone. Doesn't take any notice of it.
And let me give you a parallel comparison here in the U.S. is inter-utero exposure to drugs. Okay, so the law in Tennessee and in almost all cases is inter-utero exposure to an illegal substance is severe abuse. Just it is. Okay, it doesn't matter if the child's born healthy. It doesn't matter if the child doesn't have any drugs in their system. It doesn't matter if the child has no withdrawal. I mean, and this is any level of an illegal substance. An opiate, maybe I had a case. Mother had dental surgery 2 years before she was pregnant, had a Vicodin or something left over, right, or an Oxycontin, and took one or two during her pregnancy. And she was drug tested by the OBGYN. She goes to the hospital, has her baby. She's fine. Baby's fine. No problems. At 2 days old, they walk in the hospital and take her baby away from her. And she got her own OBGYN, who was a high-risk OBGYN, to go to court and tell the court there is no evidence and no research that shows that child is going to suffer any type of long-term harm. And she still lost her child.
So this is what I truly don't understand. I mean, you can go, okay, Child Protection Services, they've got a quota to fill, they've got a hero complex, they get applauded when they remove a child. You sort of understand the human condition enough to go, well, that's where they're coming from. That's how they make these choices. What I don't understand is, and perhaps I've got too high an ideal of judges and magistrates, but what I don't understand is how, I mean, I've had people who've had boxes of evidence to take to court, and the judge has gone, no, that's going to take too long. We're not going to accept that into evidence. And fine, it's not passed in. And then immediately afterwards, the Crown lawyer brings up something that is in that evidence.
Exactly.
And they can't defend against it. But again, we've got cases where there is proper defence put forward. They've fully proven their case, and our magistrates still rule against them. I don't understand how those magistrates are sleeping at night, frankly. I don't understand.
Yeah, and that question has come up because I know a lot of people are kind of looking at the whole jury trial issue. Should we really just be doing jury trials? Anytime you're removing a child, abuse, terminating parental rights, should we have jury trials? Because there's, and I'm going to just say this very colloquially, but they're in on it. You know what I mean? I mean, they are the magistrate, the judges, the whole court system. Here in the U.S., they actually get funds from the same pool, same pot of funds, right?
Right, same here.
Yeah, so they may get, you know, and again, part of that, it's like such a warped financial system and financial incentive. Like you have to have a certain caseload to be able to get a certain pot of funds, right? And so, but you don't want to spend too much time on those cases because it doesn't gain you anything else, right? So, you know, so it's, you know, I know they have the court improvement project. They get to hire YSOs, youth service officers, probation officers, all out of the same pool of CPS money. And so you have this very perverted system. And again, these judges don't want to work that hard. I mean, that's
so the quicker they can rush those cases through, the more money they make. So it's per case that they get their funding? Is that?
Yeah, part of it. Yes,
right.
part of it. Because the number of children in foster care is what they get funded for.
The judges get funded for the number of children that get put in foster care?
Well, the
pool of funding.
Yeah, it doesn't show up like that on theirs, but their caseloads get funding. Okay. So, you know, they have to have, you know, so if their caseload is higher, then they can get more money from that federal funding pool. Although it doesn't specifically say foster care children, they now have to serve and satisfy the state who's only getting their money because the kids are going into foster care.
So perhaps I'm simplifying this too much, but would a solution be for that funding to be equalised? As in, okay, we're going to give this much funding for children removals and we're going to give this much funding for family restoration. Would that solve this issue?
You're thinking way too logically here, aren't you? So let me tell you a couple things, and I talk about this wherever I go. First of all, our Title B money, which I told you is kind of the family preservation money, is about $600 million federal money. The foster care money is $9 billion. Okay, so
wow.
It's 10 times. So what happened in 2018, we've done just like a lot of citizen lobbying, just kind of going to DC, I mean, in a very unorganized, you know, but just knocking on doors saying child welfare reform. And we got what's called the Family First Act passed in 2018, which basically says that you can use that Title IV money, you can use that foster care money for 12 months prior to removal to provide services for that family. So if
wow. That's great.
Follow along here though. We're not there. So basically they're saying if you identify a family as a Title IV family and they are at risk of removal, you can provide services. So drug treatment, et cetera, et cetera. But nobody will implement it.
What? Why?
Because it messes up the whole system. I mean, foster care is a private industry. They're all private contractors. That when they first put the Family First Act in place in February 2018, the states were supposed to implement it by October of that year. Didn't happen. They came in, the lobbyists, there's 146 lobbyists in Washington, D.C. for foster care. They came in, they pushed it back a year. Then they pushed it back another year. Then they pushed it back another year. So right now it's like October 2022 before they have to implement the Family First Act. I wrote a Family First Act for the state. And so I have written that, I have taken it to legislators. The state of Nebraska had something very similar, and I kind of looked at what they were doing to do a state level Family First Act, which forced the state agencies to recreate that focus. And I just can't get it through. I mean, our governor has 40 lobbyists in the state legislature. And, you know, I work full time. I can't lobby full time. I wish I could, because I've now created enough contacts and, you know, enough knowledge and linguistics about what I'm doing that, you know, it really, I think would serve much better if I could just lobby full time. And it is something that I'm looking at, within the next 12 months or so to try to position myself to be able to do that.
Mm. Oh, okay. We'll go back to the questions. We really wanted, but
yeah. But let me say one other thing.
Yeah.
Because when I go and I speak to a legislative forum or government forum, the other thing I say is that the agency itself needs to be split in two.
Yes, okay? I totally agree with you on this. Yeah.
Because in this, like in Tennessee and in a lot of states in the U.S., the agency has the name services in the agency. It says Department of Children's Services, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Child Protective Services is part of that agency, but it needs to be split up. It needs to be totally split up. And
what would you think of the arm that's more focused on building a case against a parent? What would you think of that going into law enforcement rather than it being a government? Because I often think parents have this sort of naive view that child protection services are there to help them. And I know parents who have reached out to them themselves, saying, I need help.
Absolutely, they have.
Yeah, and they don't expect that they're
children because we're the better parent, right?
Right.
But yes, absolutely.
They don't expect it. They don't see it coming. And they often, like if you were put into a police situation where they're conducting an interview, you're going to be aware of your Miranda. You're going to be thinking about your lawyer. You're going to be careful what you say. And I think that's reasonable and fair because there is an uneven power balance anyway. So I think it should be a police.
Yes. And for instance, in Tennessee, we have a Department of Developmental Disabilities and Substance Abuse, okay? Totally separate department, which rarely, they should be helping parents as well, but they rarely do that. But that is an agency that is focused on help. It's focused on services, it's focused on help, it's focused on rehabilitation. But Child Protective Services is an investigative law enforcement agency. I was a district, that's what they're doing. They are doing law enforcement. So
without some of the restrictions on normal law enforcement.
Exactly.
So,
and like here in Tennessee, for instance, and this is a law I'm challenging, and it's going up to the Court of Appeals right now. They can do in Tennessee, CPS can do what's called an investigative order. So they can go to court and they can get, without even telling you, they can go to court, they can prepare a petition, they can ask the court for a court order to force you to open your doors and let them in your house and interview your children, okay? And they do it ex parte. So, that is so, even to a non-offending parent, they can do that too.
Yeah, it's invasive.
So unconstitutional. It's so horrible that they
here they can go into schools or and interview the child, and without a parent present, without a lawyer present. And I've had child protection workers say to me, we can make a child say anything we want to.
Absolutely.
Which is disturbing, absolutely disturbing, because they often seem to manipulate these children into making statements.
Right, and they don't record it. They don't record it.
No.
They just make their notes, right? And and that's kind of a question that's sort of come up and it's sort of gone through the courts here in this part of the country. There's a case where it's a case out of Kentucky, and it went up on a civil rights case. And basically the mother had a baby. She had 3 other children at home, middle-class family, and she tested positive for an opiate when the baby was born. And they came and they took her baby, put the baby under a safety plan. And then while they were doing that, they went to school and interviewed her other 3 children without any notice. Well, it came out that she had had a bagel with poppy seeds, like the baby had her baby, right?
I think I've heard about this case, yeah.
And so They went to court on whether or not it was a Fourth Amendment violation to go to school and interview those children when those children were not there was no belief that those children were even abused. And they found that it was a Fourth Amendment violation. But here we are, it's 2020, and we just got a court to rule on that. I'm like, seriously? So yeah, going to school, interviewing them, and oh my gosh, interviewing about child sexual abuse. These workers are not at all equipped or trained. They're strangers to these children. I mean, and this is something that's changed over the course of time that I've been involved. What used to happen is that we used to have extended forensic examinations of children, and children would have a psychologist that they would end up meeting with 6, 7, 8 times, but they would have an opportunity to develop a level of trust with that psychologist. And, and then start to share things slowly. Well, now they just throw children in these little rooms, these little interrogation rooms with two-way mirrors and videos. I mean, and these little children, 5, 6, 7 years old, how intimidating. And then they spend 15 minutes talking to them about, good body parts, bad body parts. I mean, and it's so bad. I have seen a child sit there and say, what do you not like? And there's like, I don't like my private parts being touched. And then the next question the interviewer asks is something like, well, do you like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? I mean, they so minimize what has happened and what the conversation is about that these little children have no idea. They have no idea how serious it is. I mean, it's very odd, and it's so against what professional training, provided us years ago on child sexual abuse. So yes, back to the question, we need to split agencies, and we need to have a service agency that is totally separate from an investigative agency, and parents need to know when they're being investigated.
All right, this is on to the next question. So in the US, there are over 500,000 children in foster care. In Australia, and I've actually adjusted this figure last night with research, but in Australia, the figure is around 65,000, which is actually per capita is around about the same figure, interestingly. But of those, I think it's 97% are taken in the name of neglect rather than sexual or physical abuse. Can you speak about why that figure is so skewed?
Well, and here it's around 80% of those 500,000 are in foster care due to what they term as neglect. Now, I will say that based upon the research that I've done in that 80%, about half of that 80%, so about 40%, they claim there's substance abuse. Now, substance abuse, according to CPS, can be you smoke marijuana once a week to you're a daily meth user, okay? I mean,
yeah.
No, they don't parse that out any. So you do have a substance abuse problem. Opiates are horrible in the U.S. Meth is still horrible. We don't know what we're doing with marijuana, and half the states it's legal and half the states it's not. But that's 40% of basically the children in care. And I don't, unless it's serious substance abuse, I do think, you cannot raise a child and be an effective parent and be a meth head. You just can't do it.
No.
Too much. But, parents who smoke pot, they're working, they provide for their children. I mean, how is that any different than, a parent who is, drinking a couple beers, right? I mean, you can't say that is rises to neglect. Now, let's talk about that other 40%. Because that other 40% is really frightening to me. And it's because we don't know I know just from personal experience and from, all the cases I've done and talked to. And, on Facebook, we have the Family Forward Project, which now is about 14,000 people. I do some live broadcasts there. People are always sending me messages. I'm reading through, things that have occurred. But, it can be anything from domestic violence. Like I know of one story where they took this mom's kids. She had a boyfriend that was violent, but they took her children because they witnessed domestic violence. But then she broke up with him. She got rid of him. She got her life independently and in order, and they refused to give her children back because they were afraid she was going to get back together with him, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got cases where the mum's broken up with, and look, I know that it happens where males can be abused as well, but generally it tends to be mums. We've had mums where they've left the domestic violence situation, gone to CPS for help because they don't have accommodation for them and their children, and Child Protection has just taken the kids.
Yes.
Which is just stuns me,
Yes. In that neglect, we have domestic violence. We have education is an issue because, the homeschooling, and parents went to homeschool, and that has become neglect in some cases.
Yeah, I don't quite understand that one, I have to say.
Yeah. And then also there's a big thing with medical neglect, and that comes in a couple different flavors or categories. And one of them is and I'm doing a lot with cases of babies that have broken, fractured ribs and subdural hematomas, because there is a medical diagnosis that's really linked to that's being ignored and not treated. And then there are those that perhaps a baby has some type of a complex medical, and a parent just misses a doctor's appointment. And maybe their car broke down. Maybe there's a real reason. And then the doctor's office calls DCS. And I had this happen. DCS calls a parent and says, you missed a doctor's appointment. And they go, okay, we've called them and we've set it, for next week or something. And they're like, no, you need to be there by the end of the week. And they go and they force an appointment in there. And then when they're at the appointment, they take their child.
What? Wow.
Even with no finding by the doctor that the delay caused any problems. So that neglect, a dirty house. I can't. One time, my poor client, he had, and he was, he doesn't make a lot of money. He was a bus driver, and, I'm not prejudiced about that. And I was raised with very humble means. And I would have been taken away from my mom by today's standards totally, because I had domestic violence and a poor mom, that raised me. But he had, he lived in a neighborhood where it wasn't safe to leave things outside. So he had a lawnmower. And so he pulled the lawnmower into the laundry room, right? And then he had, in his bathroom, he had a shower curtain that had about 3 little specks of mildew at the bottom of the shower curtain, right? Yep. And then they had a place where they'd had a leak in the roof, and, there was some plaster and stuff that was that needed. And they were made a huge deal about him having a lawnmower in his dining room. In his room. Because it was next to the kitchen, because the laundry room was next to the kitchen, he had a lawnmower in it, and because he had mildew and mold, he had a ceiling that was falling in. Wow. And I made them go back to the house and take photographs, and I sent my own photographer to take pictures of the house as well. And then they are like, oh yeah, but when we went back to the house, he had a bunch of trash bags out by the road, so he must have just cleaned up his house. Oh. So what if he did just clean up his house, right? It's the whole neglect thing is horrible. It's just horrible because there's it's whatever they want it to be on any given time. Then the other one, let's talk about this. Let's talk about psychological abuse. The psychological abuse, some people go, well, it's so abusive. And I did have one case, and actually the foster parent did this. But the foster parent took a misbehaving 4-year-old and put him in a closet. Okay. The foster parent did that. And we didn't know until we got the kid out of foster care. But, they say psychological abuse can be because you let your children eat their dessert before they ate their dinner.
Yes. Yeah.
So you didn't let them eat dessert. or you told your teenage you told your teenage child you're sorry that you wish that they were not your child, right? I mean, how many parents have told their teenager, I hate you, I just hate you, right? And so that to them is psychological abuse. So there's just and earlier you talked about having mental health professionals to attest to some of these. They'll take that to court. They'll take a parent telling a teenager, I hate you, to court and call it psychological abuse, and won't even bring in a mental health professional to even cross-examine about how do you know that's caused any harm. So it's those are the kind of cases where I turn around to them and I turn it back on them and I say, okay, so if that's such severe psychological harm, what did you do when you took the child into custody to remedy that situation?
Yeah.
And rarely do they do anything. They don't.
Yeah. No, I mean, it honestly just looks like excuses. So what would you say to families who haven't dealt with CPS and why they should join with us to fight the system?
Well, right now in the U.S., we're having riots in lots of major cities right now because of police brutality. I mean, the brutality against a child for removing a child from their byline. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, just sometimes I say to adults, what if somebody knocked on your door tonight and took you out of your home and didn't even let you pack a bag and didn't tell you where you were going and dropped you off, took you 200 miles away and dropped you at somebody's doorstep? As an adult, how would that make you feel?
Exactly. And you do that to a child, like.
Child, I'm like, what are we thinking? I mean, so I have been, I went through a period, and it takes a lot of work, so I can't keep up with it all the time, but I have had a few good newscasts run here about some of the just bizarre things that they have done and the threats and stuff. It's very, very difficult because I've been very careful. I put together very good stories, but it's hard on these parents even after they prevail. Yeah, I mean, the ones that I've taken to the news, we've prevailed and we've gotten the kids back.
Oh, wow, great.
Yeah, but it's so hard on the families and even the kids to be part of a news story, right, where you were taken out of your home. I mean, in today's internet world, who wants that story all over the internet for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
So it's, it's very difficult. And, the parents who struggle to get their kids back, but, we're getting those people to talk, and it's so important to talk and share it. Now, I'm going to take this a step farther because I truly, truly believe that the taking of children is really even darker and is more frightening. The child trafficking issues that we have in the whole entire world are horrible. They're horrible. And children go into the foster care system still, into the adoptive system, and they disappear, or they're suddenly rehomed, or, they're then put back into foster care. So it's a very, very, very broken system. It's just a very broken system.
It's interesting you should bring that up because quite by accident, we seem to be uncovering something, and we're not sure what we're uncovering. And I may have to pause it here because I'm not sure we can even say this on air yet. So to the viewers, we may have to pause here. But just going on, a lot of our families that we're interviewing are saying to us, our child's birth certificate's been changed once they're in care. I know of a parent who they changed the name of the hospital the child was born in. Siblings are removed from the birth certificate. Sometimes their name is changed. The father is removed. And in fact, in my case, I have a grandchild who was put in the system, and the same thing has happened. What is going on there? We don't understand what is going on. And we're actually quite concerned we're uncovering something criminal.
Well, and let me tell you that the state, and I just talked to a family about this, they had two little girls taken out of their home that were probably 4 and 6 years old. And they take your children and they force you to turn over their Social Security cards in,
Wow.
in the US.
Okay. I mean, we have a slightly different system, but certainly Medicare, stuff like that is a similar thing, and that's
But
also...
But once they have that Social Security card, they can do anything with it. They can change birth certificates. They can,
So
they can.
here, not so
Mhm.
much, because child protection is a state issue. Birth certificates is a federal issue, and in fact, in our legislation, it mentions child protection, and it is not legal for child protection to change birth certificates without consent of a parent, and also without either consent or the birth certificate of a grandparent. Has to, one. So, we're finding that these birth certificates and passports as well, it seems to be linked, passports and birth certificates are being obtained and changed, and it's not legal. There's no way it's legal. So
Wow.
we don't understand what's going on, why they're doing it. And we are concerned that it's a child trafficking thing. In fact, we had a very big case here, William Tyrell, who was in foster care, and my understanding is that his birth certificate was changed just before he disappeared. So, I mean, not all kids whose certificates are changed disappear, but certainly there's something very strange going on.
Well, and sometimes when I talk to people and I kind of explain to them the whole foster care, termination of parental rights, adoption, and here we have this adoption money that you get even after you adopt the child. So the state gets a bonus check for $10,000 to $12,000 per child they adopt, and then the adoptive parents continues to basically get their foster care per diem money until the child ages out. But here's what I tell people. I say, look, nobody ever goes back to check on those children.
Right.
Once you have released those children from foster care, terminated parental rights, and placed them with an adoptive parent, nobody ever goes back. Nobody ever goes and checks and makes sure those children are okay. I says nothing keeps a adoptive parent from selling the child, giving the child away, trafficking the child, whatever they want, and still getting that money.
Wow.
I mean, fostering and adoption has become so profitable here that people foster as a profession. I mean, and I've had families that adopted 4, 5, 6 children and 8 children. And, by then they're getting $10,000, $12,000 a month tax free. And, and nobody goes back and checks on those kids.
I must say that here they do check, even when a child, our different states have different laws. I believe that in New South Wales and Victoria, children can be adopted and parental rights removed. In the rest of the states, no, but they are pushing for that legislation, which I'd be horrified if it goes through. But from my understanding, even when children are adopted, DCP or Child Protection Services do follow up and check on those children. Probably only about every 12 months, but it's something. So
yeah. Until they turn 18. I mean,
until they turn 18. Yeah. I mean, we've got a problem where our foster carers and I'm not sure about adoptive parents, but where when a child ages out, they literally kick them out in the street.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
and that's
and with the group homes where they have, I mean, primarily so many of our teenagers are in group homes, and they have extended basically once a child ages out and gets kicked out of foster, they do have a period of time, and it's like 3 or 4 years, but they basically get a government check for about $450 a month until they're like 23, 24 years old.
Okay.
So here's what they do to teenagers now. Oh my gosh. They get an unruly teenager who's decided they hate their parents, and they find out if they complain about their parents and to a school counselor, they can be interviewed and be removed from their home. Well, they get them in foster care, and let's say they're 16 and a half, 17 years old. They tell them, they say, look, if you stay in foster care, you'll get a free college. You'll get $400 a month until you graduate from college or you're 24 years old. You have free medical insurance. You have, just stay in foster care. And it sounds great to, some 17, and you don't have to put up with those ungodly parents you have, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, and I have seen that happen. I know that happens. I saw it happen one time to a kid who was almost 18 years old. He was like 3 months short and less. I've seen it even 2 days short of turning 18 years old. And he's told that if he agrees to go into foster care, he can get college, he can get a monthly stipend, he'll have health insurance, and, he won't have
So you're saying a child who isn't currently in foster care is approached a couple of days before they're 18 and asked to go into foster. Well, that's got to be corruption. If
they will go into foster care, then they are considered aging out of foster care, and then they get all those government benefits.
That's unbelievable.
It is.
That's taxpayer money there being misused. There's no question.
And it's a numbers game for them, right? It's a total numbers game. We need so many children going through the foster care system.
All right, well, we're going to take a break because we've had a bit of a long session. I think we've only gotten through a couple of questions, which is terrible because we've got lots of questions here. But we'll take a break and we'll come back to this in just a bit. Hang on. We do short and in-depth videos on child protection practices. We also interview parents who tell us of their experience with child protection, as well as interviews with experts in the field. Please subscribe, hit the bell, and visit our website. See our description for more links.